choose what they do as well as where and when they do it. Did you get that? They even choose their own salaries. Whoa! Subordinates review their supervisors. Subordinates review their supervisors. I don't think you guys heard me. Subordinates review their supervisors and elect the corporate leadership. Sounds like a democracy to me. They also initiate moves into new businesses and out of old ones. I'm just going to go back to that line about subordinates reviewing their supervisors and electing corporate leadership. I'll tell you, I think in this scenario, you will have employees who respect their leaders and will follow the Pied Piper because they have had input in hiring their leaders. That's all I'm going to say on that. Here's what Gray also writes. They initiate moves into new businesses and out of old ones. The company is run like a democracy. Here's what the CEO, Ricardo Semler, has to say. I'm often asked, how do you control a system like this? And he answers, I don't. I let the system work for itself. SEMCO is organized around the belief that employees who can participate in a company's important decisions will be more motivated and make better choices than people who are receiving orders from bosses. Makes sense to me. Workers in each business unit are represented by an elected committee that meets with top managers regularly to discuss any and all workplace issues. And on important decisions such as plant relocations, every employee gets a vote. I'm just going to pause here and tell you why I think this is so awesome. You know, sometimes there are decisions made in companies without the input of people who are on the ground floor, the people who are executing, the people who know the nuances and the details and the things that are going to go wrong because they are living it day to day, executing. They have the relationships, external relationships day to day, in and out. They are the lifeblood of these companies. And they participating in the most important decisions ensures, in my opinion, success. Okay, going on. Here's what Gray writes. He says, workers at SEMCO choose their own hours. CEO Semler recalls that when he first proposed the idea, managers were convinced that this wouldn't work. Must be those old school managers that want you to punch in and punch out. Guys, that model is so old school. If you're a startup, don't try and bring that back. It's old school. Trust your employees. Hire good people and let them do what they have to do. Anyway, Semler was confident. This is what he had to say to the managers who protested. I don't think, he says, don't you think that they know how to manage their own work? And it turns out that they did, and they do. Semler says simply, if you want people to act like adults, then you need to treat them like adults. I'm going to repeat that. If you want people to act like adults, treat them like adults. Hire adults, guys. That's probably the key learning here. Hire adults. Now, he does confess that things do take longer than they do in a traditional hierarchically managed company. But Semler does elaborate in his book, Maverick, the success story behind the world's most unusual workplace. And he says that dissent and democracy do go hand in hand. He actually thinks that it's actually a good management technique. He says what traditional executives don't consider is that decisions arising from debate are implemented much more quickly because explanations, alternatives, objections, and uncertainties have already been aired. Makes sense. One of the principles underlying Semco's success is the idea that every business should be small enough that each worker can comprehend it as a whole system. I think this is, having worked for some big companies, like I'm talking in the tens of thousands of employees, I can attest to where there could be some validity in this concept. So he says, the business should be small enough that each worker can comprehend it as a whole system, right? How many of you guys work in companies, if I'm talking to some folks who are not startups, how many of you work in companies where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing because it is such a massive company, where folks down the line, down the ladder, whatever you want to call it, don't understand decisions that have been made up the line or on the top floor, whatever you want to call it. The hierarchical system sometimes, once you get to a certain size, company does not work or isn't the most efficient model. Anyway, so I think there's some validity to what he says. So this is how they deal with it. They say if a business grows to more than 150 people, the company splits it in two. So everybody, down from the receptionist secretary to the most senior managers, have to know and understand the business. And so the company has to be small enough that the entire business can be comprehended. Interesting. Startups, that's an opportunity for you. Another principle is transparency and trust. The only source of power in an organization is information, and withholding, filtering, or retaining information only serves those who want to accumulate power through hoarding. That's what Semler says. The CEO sounds very intuitive to me. Sounds like he understands company politics in a traditional model. Anyway, you can read more about this in his book. This last example of running a company like it's a democracy practically brings tears to my eyes. Even though I personally have been very guilty of saying, I don't want to, we're not running this like it's a committee, or we don't want to make decisions by committee, or this is not a democracy. Do as I say. I've been there. And, but then on the other hand, I've also been the one complaining about how our company's structured. And so if you're a startup, you have this amazing opportunity to start from scratch, to envision and realize your own company or structure and infuse your values into that company structure. So do not be afraid to chart your own organization. And I mean literally, make your own organizational chart. And be able to articulate and infuse the values that you bring to the company and set up an infrastructure that supports those values. This is Yoli Chisholm from Fresh Eyes, that's Fresh with 3 Eyes, signing out. Peace.